Right, welcome everybody. This is the most awaited panel of the entire conference. What's happening in the UK? I think most people know that it's been late starter. Not much happened for quite a long time. And then suddenly quite a lot happened. 100 to 150 altnet building fibre network across the UK. PIA coming of age, PIA being access to poles and ducts. So a lot of stuff's happening, but a very large number of providers. We've all been through the economic crisis with financing becoming very, very difficult, cost of debt going up substantially. So a lot of kind of challenges and opportunities for the UK fibre market, and a lot of things have happened in the last 4 or 5 years. And to kind of kick us off, we're going to ask Natalie Black, who is Group Director at Ofcom, to kind of give us a little bit of what Ofcom thinks of where we are. Then we're going to listen to Greg Mesh for what he believes are the most important issues in the UK fibre market from the City Fibre perspective. Jeremy Shalom will then give us a perspective from the Substantial Group. And James Warner is going to tell you which company he's from, because I could choose from 3 different companies, I think. Full Fibre, B Fibre, and Zoom. And again, give him his perspective. And then Katie Milligan will round off on the perspective of Openreach. We're going to keep this pretty short, these introductions. We're then going to have some discussion, and we are hoping to open up to discussion and questions and interventions from you guys as early as possible to make it as interactive as possible. So no more time for me. Natalie, please.
Thanks very much, Geeta. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. I haven't met quite a few people in this space yet because I'm still relatively new. So I joined Ofcom about 4 months ago. And from my point of view, I don't think it could be a more exciting time for the UK infrastructure story when it comes to full fibre. I think we are looking at a success story, but certainly one that we don't take for granted. 2017, we had 3% coverage of full fibre across the country. As of July 2024, we're now looking at 7 in 10 homes. That's pretty impressive, combined with the fact that we're seeing on average £3 to £6 billion worth of investment into the sector every year. How did that happen? I mean, we're going to hear from a whole range of people who actually made this happen. Our job as the regulator is to enable the market, and I'm looking forward to a bit of a debate about how that happens. But we did start at the bottom of the league tables, right? The UK, as Geeta has alluded to, was really far behind everyone else. I think we've genuinely seen a transformation. I mean, you would have seen the data coming out of FTTH itself. The UK is now the fastest growing country in Europe by volume for rollout, and that's something that we should be proud of, but as I say, we don't take for granted. What we have tried to do at Ofcom is set out a clear vision, a clear sense of where we wanted to go, but most importantly, give the market regulatory certainty. We set out a 10-year plan 5 years ago, and for those of you that would have been following this closely, you would have seen that this time last week, we published our proposals for how we plan to regulate the market for the next 5 years. And overall, I hope, and we will see what some of our colleagues say, there's a sense of continuity and certainty. Of course, around the margin, some different proposals, which reflects how the market has changed and evolved. This is a maturing market, but we absolutely listened to the investor community, listened to the companies, and heard what they said, which is that they wanted regulatory certainty. So I think you will see that throughout the document. But as I say, we don't take any of this for granted, and we need to recognise that scale in the UK takes time. This is not an overnight success story. I'm sort of labouring the point. This is a long-term commitment and a long-term journey. And where we do see challenges, particularly around take-up, from an Ofcom point of view, we're very open to ideas about what else we can be doing as a regulator to support the market. But ultimately, we want to retain a pro-investment, pro-competition marketplace, and that's what we're trying to do with the next stage of our regulatory proposals. I think I'll probably stop there, Geeta, to make sure that we have plenty of time for discussion and to hear from other colleagues.
Thank you for setting such a great example of being succinct.
Oh, thank
Greg.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Geeta. Thank everybody from the Fibre-to-the-Home Council. I'm really nervous because my wife and daughter are supposed to walk in that door at any time. And I'm not nervous in front of Katie, but I am nervous if my wife and daughter are in the audience. So I'm Greg Mesh, CEO of City Fibre. We're one of the oldest fibre builders. We originally started building metro fibre across the UK. In cities outside of the M25, so we're about 265 cities now across the UK. And then we started fibre-to-the-home rollouts back in 2017 with an anchor with Vodafone. We have gone on to now have all the major ISPs that don't have their own network on our system and services. So we've progressed greatly through that process. We're now at about 4.6 million. We just announced an acquisition this week of another 185,000 homes. So we're about 4.6 million passed, about 4.3 million homes ready for service. Our stated target where we want to get to is no less than 30% of the UK, which we think is about 8 million homes. We can see a path to getting from 8 to 10 to 12. We think a combination of altnets in this industry over the next several years will get us there. We believe strongly in that it's competition that has driven this market and driven the wonderful success that Natalie spoke about. There's an important point. Not only have we gone from fiber coverage of 2% or 3% or 5% to 70%, the cost of a gigabit line has gone from 300 to 500 pounds down to 30. So you've had two transformational things. We're putting world-class infrastructure across the UK with pace. We all are. I think it's been driven by competition, who said, we'll do it, and that's made the incumbents move really rapidly. But the benefits are that the consumers have a world-class infrastructure to use, but it's also about 90% less than it was 10 years ago. So our current offers on our platform across the UK, I know Jeremy's about the same spots, about 25 to 30 pounds for a gigabit symmetrical line. And that's truly transformational because it'll allow you to do whatever you want in the future, and you have decades generational infrastructure going on. We're currently about 25,000 gross adds a month and growing. We've just recently signed a strategic agreement with Sky that allows us then to bring on and onboard the largest service provider that doesn't have a network. We're at 560,000 now, and we see ourselves to 1 million. We actually see ourselves pretty clearly to 2, and then we have an ambition to get to 3 million connected properties within a very short period of time. And just to put that in context, that moves City Fibre to about 500 million in revenue and 350 million in EBITDA. And we think that's the scale that we have to get to for the industry so that we're healthy, substantial, and we're here and secure for the long run. So you did mention, Geeta, that with a few things that we're looking forward to. Obviously, we were very looking forward to the regulation that's just been published and the consultation, the TAR. It looks, in our view, the right way, which is create a sustainable competitive environment, because the pressure of the competitive environment is what creates that private investment that just keeps coming in. And that's the most important thing. I mean, in the UK, we have many of our industrial sectors. They're mostly struggling. But this one is super healthy. It's private investment pouring in, foreign direct investment into the UK, and it's rebuilding the most critical digital infrastructure, or the most critical infrastructure the country could have. And we do think it's sustainable competition, which will put the UK in a better spot. And then when you talk about consolidation, there's many that are saying, Greg said it has to be. No, I think it's math. The math is that if you begin to consolidate the networks, you'll get bigger scale that can then bring better economics to everybody, and then it's more comfortable for the equity shareholders and more comfortable for the debt. So I think it's just a math equation. It's the same math that the cable industry used, the same math that the mobile industry used. It's an extremely expensive building digital infrastructure, supporting them, running those things. And so using this phase where we kind of reduce our build and start doing acquisitions, we think is a normal phase of this industrial challenge at this point, or the industrial point. So with that, Geeta,
Thanks very much.
Turn it over.
Pass on to Jeremy, please.
Thank you very much. So I'm Jeremy Chelot. I'm the group CEO of 3 companies, so Netomnia, UFiber, and Brisk. To give you some numbers, so as of the end of March of this year, we've got now 2.3 million premises serviceable. And we've got close to 300,000 customers. We're likely to finish the month at about 289,000, 290,000 customers. What we are the most well known for is the amount of capital that we spend to get there and the time that it took us to get there. I used to be the CEO of Community Fibre, one of the oldest altnet in the UK, with CityFibre, with GigaClear, and with HyperOptic. I was the CEO of that company between 2015 and 2019, and then left to start Netomnia and UFiber. Over the last 5 years, what we've achieved has been phenomenal, because now we are the second largest altnet after CityFibre. Our business model is slightly different. So while we've got a wholesale platform, which is Netomnia, with a contract with TalkTalk, we also have our own retail internet service provider. It's well known that the UK market is kind of, everybody's trying to figure out how to do that netco and servco split. So you've got obviously BT and Openreach in the UK, with Openreach being a netco and a wholesale platform, but with a strong anchor tenant with BT. Obviously, everybody knows that Virgin Media is trying to do a split currently, trying to create a netco vehicle and having VMO2 as a strong anchor tenant, which is also currently the anchor tenant of their greenfield deployment called Nexfibre. We took, to a certain extent, a very similar approach. We created a wholesale platform called Netomnia, and we are also creating a strong anchor tenant. To put in perspective, that ISP today is adding in the region of 20,000 gross adds a month on a 2.3 million footprint. In Q1 this year alone, we'll be able to do around 50,000 net adds in the UK. It is a phenomenal number when you actually own that ISP. What is interesting in the UK is we are now seeing the birth of potentially a third network, but potentially not. Obviously, we've got Natalie from Ofcom, and it will be interesting to understand her take basically on that. But how I see the UK fibre is that there are really, as far as I'm concerned, 2 strong paths. There is a path where, at the infrastructure level, there is consolidation happening using our platform, but in combination with Virgin Media NetCo. And that's going to be one path, which I think is a path that is going to be explored, because VMO2, or at least their shareholder, Liberty and Telefonica, have not made it a secret that as part of creating a NetCo platform, they want to be able one of the consolidation vehicle in the UK. Equally, it's no secret that CityFibre and myself believe that consolidation needs to happen. We need to create a platform which has a much bigger scale. Nevertheless, Netomnia, UFiber, and Breeze are in a relatively unique position. We've been consistently, since the beginning of the company over the last 5 years, raising capital every year, like clockwork. Liquidity is more difficult to find in the UK, but so far, we've always managed. And we still have a very strong organic plan. So we're expecting to reach 3 million homes by the end of this year. And then the ambition is to extend that organic plan to 4, then 5, and maybe beyond that. But obviously, we don't look at it as a standalone plan. So we do look at consolidation and see how we create a third network in the UK. And that's, I think, now that we've got, with the Telecom Access Review, a framework where we know what to expect for the next 5 years. Obviously, still going to wait to see if Equinox 3 comes around, and maybe Katie can share a bit with us today. But now that there is a foundation where it's clear, basically, for the investors, the lenders, and the operators of what we should expect from the regulator for the next 5 years, now we can start planning, basically, the next phase, which is that consolidation phase, to make it even more interesting than the last 5 or 10 years have been. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. James, your perspective, please.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is James Warner. I'm Group CEO of a group of companies, Full Fibre, Zoom, and B-Fibre. And I'm representing the small guys on the panel here. So we are 600,000 in RFS footprint in available to serve, about 80,000 customers, and acquiring about 4,000 or 5,000 customers a month onto the platform. And we're on a mission to really create the most profitable, most efficient, most attractive platform in the UK as far as altnets go. And the company has come about really through a number of mergers. So we are now, we have just recently announced our second merger with Zoom. Full Fibre as a business started out life as a wholesale-only player, built the network organically to about 200,000, then merged with another altnet called Digital Infrastructure to bring it to the 400,000 mark. We inherited an in-house ISP at that time as well, so maintaining our wholesale roots, but now also having retail access to market, and most recently bringing Zoom in as well, taking it to 600,000. So our perspective is mergers are happening, they're underway, we're right in the thick of it, second one being delivered as we speak, and very interested to continue that journey and really take the platform that we've got of incredibly capital efficient, very, growing very nicely comparatively in terms of the scale points, and being attractive to the rest of the market to look at how we can continue to grow that through M&A activities. I think when I think about the state of the UK market, it's been a bit of a challenging time from an investor and a banking point of view over the last few years. It's, UK PLC has been a bit challenging. Fibre has been a bit of a negative space for some people as well. But I genuinely see a real big turning point now. I see the sentiment starting to change. I think some of the core platforms are coming through, commercializing really heavily and really well. We know that there's a lot more excitement coming in. And with the integration taking place now and those mergers happening, Greg having announced one recently, Brisk and Netomnia coming together, us on our second, looking at third and fourth, there's really an opportunity to take ourselves to that third, fourth, fifth network, whatever that looks like, we'll get into, I'm sure. And the real important part is making sure that we maintain a stable landscape to keep investor sentiment high. And the TAR is a big part of that, giving us the ability to give the confidence to the investors moving forward.
And we will finish off with Katie Milligan's view. Katie has just recently been promoted to be Deputy CEO of Openreach. So let's have Openreach's view.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So, as Geeta said, I'm from Openreach. We are the leading fibre provider in the UK, and our job is really simple, which is to fibre the nation. And we are really in the process of what we are really becoming is moving from a copper company to a fibre company. So where are we on that journey? Well, first of all, our job is to try and build everywhere, in the UK, and ideally we should be able to get to about 30 million premises passed by the end of the decade. And if I look at where we are at the moment, any minute now we'll be touching 18 million premises passed with our network. And we are running probably at around, well not probably, we are running at over 1 million premises per quarter. And if anything, we've been able to hold that and speed that up around the last 5 quarters consecutively. So it really shows that we have the bit between our teeth. We've got the capacity to even make that go faster. And I think where that leads us now, I think everyone has talked about the UK being slow to start, but through the combined effort of everyone on the panel, we're certainly catching up. And we're now running at a pace to try and do that. In terms of our build, we're really proud of the fact that we're able to do it at low cost and continued really high quality. As a provider of the nation, we want to make sure that that continues as we try and push to finish the job throughout the remainder of the decade. But as I always say, it's not just about building the network. That is a lovely job of spending lots of money. The ideal thing is to try and drive as much take-up as possible. So that really is our focus. How do we continue with the job, but really make sure that customers can enjoy the great benefits of the network that we are building. And in terms of where we are on that journey, we have 6.5 million customers on the platform. And if I look at where we are at the moment, that's probably a run rate. We've just hit over 500,000 customers been added to the platform in the last quarter alone. So really now starting to get peak in terms of adding customers onto the platform. And our job is to continue to try and push that at pace to make sure that we are getting the take-up on the platform. And listen, there's great signs. It's great to hear from everyone on the platform that customers are looking for fibre services, because we know that it continued will be a great benefit to the UK economy. So I will be continuing with the team to try and push that at pace. So what's next for Openreach? Well, pretty much more of the same, ideally a bit quicker. We always want to speed up. And the piece will be for us to make sure that we continue what we call our balance build. And that is where we've been building across all markets and across all of the home nations. And as we go through, certainly the next couple of years, we'll really be ramping up on that. And with some of the key programs that I know others in the panel are, which is BDUK, the rural build. So we'll be working on that to make sure that customers who have not had access to great broadband can now have the brilliant access and at market-leading prices that the fantastic competition in the UK is driving. So I think the key piece for us in the last couple of weeks has obviously been the Telecoms Access Review. I have to admit, I have not read all 1,000 pages on it. We have people busily doing that. I've read a lot of it, and I have to welcome the continuity. We all know that this is a very long investment, and I'm sure there'll be stuff that we need to read the detail on, but I welcome that continuity and being able to continue to invest in the UK, particularly at a time when we know everyone in this room is adding into the growth potential of the company at a time whenever we need it most.
Thanks very much, Katie. So just picking up on the theme of take-up that you just mentioned here, what we're seeing in the UK is quite a varied picture of different levels of take-up between different operators. And statistically, I don't have the latest numbers, but altnets tend to be kind of in the late teens, take-up, some in the 20s, some in the not even in the middle of the teens. And Openreach is sitting at around 35% take-up, as I understand it. And obviously, that is a marked difference between the two. And I'll be interested in the panel's view of how did we get there and what can we do about it. And I think we'll save Natalie for a bit later and maybe start with Jeremy.
So first of all, I think it's comparing Openreach take-up and the altnet take-up, I think it's like comparing apple and oranges, because one is a migration exercise. A lot of those customers are already connected onto the Openreach FTTC network and being migrated to FTTP. So it's not the same thing as winning a new customer onto a new network. So I don't know if we can compare the two, because for me they are kind of apple and oranges. But if we look at the take-up performance altnet. So first of all, it's important to note that to get to a reasonable take-up, this is not something that you do in 2 or 3 years. All those cohort take-up or take-up curve that people look at tend to be 5 years or more. So I understand that from an investor and a lender perspective, sometimes, mainly from an investor perspective rather than a lender perspective, there is, okay, how can we achieve that in 2 to 3 years, or how can we contract basically the time to get to a reasonable take-up? I will come back to what a reasonable take-up means, but there is a level of churn that you will expect basically in the UK, and the level of churn currently in the UK is in the region of 15%. If you look at BT churn today, I think it's 1.3% a month. If you look at the churn from Virgin Media or Sky or Vodafone, they are in this type of number. I think TalkTalk is materially higher than that, but so you have that churn. And so really what the altnets are doing is trying to get a disproportionate amount of that churn to churn basically to onto our network. And therefore there is a limit to the speed of what you can do, because if technically there is a 1.3% churn basically a month, if you were to get 100% of that in terms of ads basically a month, you will still finish the year only with about 15% take-up. And therefore, after that, you will need to be able to carry on at that pace, which is not realistic. But when you look at the performance of companies like, and I'm talking about the retail ISP on the altnet side rather than the larger retailers, because the larger retailers in the UK are mainly losing customers. BT is losing a customer, TalkTalk is losing customer, as far as I understand, Sky is losing customer. Vodafone is the only one actually growing at a rapid pace. But from the altnet perspective, you look at the performance of company like HyperOptic, for example, they have a 30% blended take-up across their network. This is at exactly the same level as what you can see from BT Retail or Virgin Media O2. So if you compare actually technically a formidable marketing and sales engine that can be BT and VMO2, and that's the level of penetration that they get, the fact that HyperOptic got to those numbers is fantastic. If you look at Community Fibre I think has a blended take-up in the region of 25. This is also formidable. If you look at UFibre, so my ISP, so we've got currently on the network a blended take-up around 12 to 13%. But if you look at everything we've done over the last 4 to 5 years, now we're already at 40%. And the things that are more like 3 to 4 years old, they're in the 30%. So there is a clear trend among all the altnet that the altnet with a strong retail ISP gets basically into this 30% mark, but potentially much higher. I think my take-up charts have been published, I think, a couple of months ago into a document. And what you can see is our take-up is actually still completely linear. You can still draw a line through all the points, showing that so far we've not actually identified where the ceiling is. And the ceiling could be at 40, maybe 50. We don't know, because this is a function also of the average revenue per user that we charge. And at that game, the altnet tend to be materially cheaper than the larger retailers. So BT has an ARPU of about £42, I think, 41 to 42. Our ARPU today is between 25 and 26. And therefore, when you have such gap in terms of pricing, it benefits, obviously, consumers. And it also creates basically an environment where you can get a disproportionate amount of the churn, and therefore you can grow your customer base. But I think there is a natural inertia from that churn number. That means that it takes time to get there. Like my network, for example, was built over the last 24 months. So 3/4 of the network, so the 2.3 million that I have, 3/4 of that number was built over the last 24 months. It's actually a very young network. So having this type of number or such young network is actually formidable. And but I think take-up for the altnet is fine.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's a really good perspective from somebody with the retail side. I mean, maybe Greg, do you have a thought for the wholesale-only business?
I don't know what I'd add to Jeremy. I think you just gave the whole background of the whole industry.
Sorry.
We need help. We all do. All the altnets, because we are not an incumbent. The incumbent has all the customers. Competition wasn't about building fiber. Competition is about moving the customers off the incumbents' networks onto the new networks. And we need a great deal of help. It's not a level playing field. It's not equal at all. They have all the money. They have all the resources. They have all the people. They have all the customer contracts. So we have to, as a retailer, he has to go after them sequentially one at a time. As a wholesaler, we went after it to get the customers first, the big customers. So we have all the major customers that used to buy on Openreach, now on CityFibre. But now we have to do the painful process of moving their customers onto our network. And so we either do it through migrations or we do it through new acquisitions. But as the head, Natalie, who's head of the regulatory environment that we exist in now, and the TAR was just published, it's all about competition and helping to rebalance. Because if you're going to have a sustainable third network, even if it's fractured, so there's a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, they will only exist if the customers come off of Openreach and Virgin and move on to our network. That's it. It's a very simple math game. It's not a win-win. For us to succeed, we must take market share from Openreach, who doesn't want to lose one customer. And the same with Virgin. So it's a very, very difficult, arduous process. It's a long-term infrastructure play, to Jeremy's point. Any of our cities where we finished, from Inverness, Stirling, Milton Keynes, Aberdeen, they're all over 30%. 2 years after completing the city, 30% of all the customers in that city have moved. They're all. That's without Sky. As we bring Sky on, we can see that a mature city with our wholesale model will be between 40 and 50%. That's just, we can see it. It's the math is the math is the math. But it takes us a long time. It was quick for everybody to rush out and build network. It's now going to take us a long time, and we're going to need a great deal of help from the regulator, from the government, from whoever we can, to rebalance the customers now. Because they want to choose. They want to choose Jeremy's 26-pound gigabit line, but in some cases they have a 2-year contract. They're locked in. They get penalized if they move early. Their ISPs are locked in long-term volume agreements, long-term incentive plans, all kinds of things that lock on to that existing infrastructure. So when it comes to how does we view take-up, how do we view the industry? We view that there's enough network built now to create a sustainable competitive threat to Openreach. And it's the sustainable competitive threat that we need to have exist, because for the long term, there's between the altnet industry now, there's a roughly 16 million fiber homes built. That equals Openreach's size of their fiber plant. So inevitably starting to come together, and then doing all of the long, hard work with regulatory support of shifting the customers off of the old infrastructure onto the new infrastructure, onto more competitive. Because as a challenger, it's real simple. We have to have a better product, we have to have a better service, and we have to be better economics, or nobody will use us. And that's really hard when you've got incumbencies on the other side with their power. So we're still in a very much in a regulatory environment, supported by the UK government, supported by Ofcom, that allows us to have the time, the patience, to develop those long-term sustainable models. And Jeremy's spot on. There'll be some consolidation coming together, because as you get bigger, you get more scale. You get more scale, you get more connections, you get more EBITDA, you can service more debt, you can service more equity. It's just a simple equation. So we need help.
Thanks, Greg. I think Katie might want to have a right of reply.
Yeah, listen, as the incumbent, of course, there's only one place where customers are headed to, and we get that. But I think there's always a question around a level playing field. And I'd probably be a broken record if I didn't say it again, which is the job is to have a level playing field, not a tilted playing field. And we're really vociferous about that. And whilst Openreach is the incumbent, I don't think it's fair to take away from the laser focus that we've had in driving down the cost, the pace, the engineering, in making sure that we are driving the take-up. And at the same time, we shouldn't forget that we're enabling the competition by the regulated pricing that we've got, but also through the availability of PIA, which allows lower costs in order for the infrastructure competition to exist. So making sure that it's fair at the infrastructure pricing level, but in terms of the availability to our infrastructure at the same time. And in terms of the advantage, I think the one thing that it's probably fair to say is, which is if you look at our world, Greg, they're not that dissimilar now in terms of competing for customers. I think the point was made around, it's around migrating customers from one platform to the next. But invariably, actually, in the wholesale deals that you'll be doing with the customers on your platform, actually, it's no different in terms of engineering and in terms of targeting their existing customers to go on to your platform. If anything, you'll be doing it with much cheaper pricing than I'll be doing it with, and therefore the competition for Openreach is to continue to make sure that, despite the higher pricing, is to make sure that we can do it through service, nationwide coverage, etc. So, I mean, there will always be this debate around whether or not the incumbency advantage, but actually I think we've shown through evidence and the mere fact of the levels of competition, it's a bit of an old argument now. I think the market has shown that it's able to build using the PIA product and through some of these numbers achieve take-up. So I think it's around competing on the merits, and that's, of course, what we'll continue to do.
Natalie?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in here as well. But, I mean, I think this is an example of exactly what we want to see, right? Both on the panel here and out in the marketplace, we want a healthy debate. When you look across the UK now, 70% of the country, there is a choice between Openreach or an altnet. And 22% of the country, there's a choice between Openreach or 2 or more altnets. That is where we want to be. From the point of view of the regulator, our job is to regulate the significant market power of Openreach. And why do we do that? We do that for 2 reasons. One, to focus on outcome for consumers. I don't think it's our job to regulate the movement of consumers. It is our job to regulate for the outcomes of consumers, and choice is a key part of that. But I have got one eye on the investment environment, which is our other responsibility at Ofcom. And I think it's a demonstration in the maturity of the market that investors are now placing more emphasis on take-up. That's the reality of where we operate now, and that, to a degree, is a compliment. It's recognizing the pace and the progress made in infrastructure build, that now investors are emphasizing where we are on take-up. So undoubtedly, that is something that we will keep an eye on as well. But ultimately, we've got to focus on outcomes, and it's up to these guys to make the most of the market as we are trying to make sure that it is a level playing field.
So James, just on the theme of investors and the importance to investors of take-up, but also in terms of the general investment environment in the UK. It's been tough. Is it getting better?
Yes, it is getting better. And I think just a lot's been said about this already, but for me, the key thing is that altnets are doing a fantastic job of acquiring customers, a really good job. We don't blow our trumpet enough about it. There's a very dysfunctional retail landscape in the UK, from my perspective. What we've done is we've created an environment that stimulates a lot of competition at the infrastructure layer. That was an objective that was set out over a decade ago. We've done a very good job of trying to introduce that, but never truly tackled the retail layer challenge. And so what's ended up happening is altnets, for the most part, have had to go and build their own retail engines. And many investors wouldn't have wanted that. Many of these infrastructure investors want a very stable, long-term, secure, non-service co-based business. They want to, it's an infrastructure play for many of them. But we recognize that because of the dysfunctional landscape in the UK, when it comes to the retail side of it, with 90% plus of consumers tied up in the big 4 or 5 players out there, the only way we can acquire customer share or market share in our geographies is to do it ourselves. And for the most part, we've done a bloody good job. Acquiring at circa 1% of the available customers a month across the panel here and many other altnets in the UK. And you compare that to what's actually happening with some of those significant retail players, Vodafone, BT, Sky. They're just about maintaining what they've got, if not losing, as Jeremy suggested. They are losing customer shares, and they're losing it to us. Openreach, the incumbent, is losing customers, and they are coming to us. But they are only coming to us because of the energy and effort that we have had to put in to acquire those customers, which at the outset, we probably didn't want to do. We thought at the outset that maybe there is a way of disrupting that retail landscape and that kind of significant control that Openreach has over those retail players, but it's actually been too difficult to do in the most part. Greg has now got there. He has now got most of the market, but it's been a very long journey for City Fibre to get there. For someone of my scale and Jeremy's scale, getting a bit bigger, but trying to get into Sky or, heaven forbid, trying to get into BT retail at some point in the future is a real challenge. So we're just having to do it ourselves. And yes, it's getting better. Investors, I think, are getting comfortable now with the level of performance of take-up, the cost that we're putting into it. But it has meant a bit of a pivot, specifically for my business, originally being wholesale only, pivoting to saying, no, we're going to have to do this ourselves.
Okay, so that kind of opens an interesting theme, which is the retail market in the UK. I think James just explained it, just so you all know, is that it's dominated by a very small number of large retail providers that have originally resided on the Openreach network, except for Virgin Media O2, who were vertically integrated business. And obviously, as Greg has been explaining, it's been difficult to tempt them across to competing networks, largely because of the costs associated with that kind of onboarding of a new wholesale provider, the risks, the processes, all the things that go along with that. But then another thing that Jeremy mentioned earlier was the word equinox. Equinox, for those who don't know it, are the names that are given to 2 different wholesale discount schemes that Openreach introduced during the current market review. And to an extent, potentially, they are the result of the bargaining power of these small number of large retail providers. So I think, the next question to Katie is, now that we're seeing these large providers moving to other networks, what's the negotiation like? Is it getting harder and harder to retain these large providers because they are kingmakers in this market, in the infrastructure market, effectively?
Could I get in that room?
Sorry?
Could I get in that negotiating room?
No, you can't, but I'm quite interested in some of the dynamics and what's happening.
Yeah, so listen, there's always discussions with customers. There always is. It hasn't just happened by virtue of the last couple of years. These are active discussions. We've had various pricing deals that have gone on for the last 7 years plus, right? So it's the nature of competition and the nature, even in a previous world, of our wholesale customers competing with each other, right? So that's the whole point of it. I know that Jeremy always asks me around whether or not there's an Equinox 3. The reality is we continue to work with customers and to see whether or not that's needed or not. The priority is for us to keep building and, if anything, accelerate it, because we know that we will be more advantageous and competitive where we have FTTP, right? That's really clear. We've talked about that. And we will continue to look at not only pricing, and I think it's really easy to just always think that it's about down to pricing or the fact that it is difficult for our customers to move away. I don't have anyone in a stronghold. I definitely don't. And Greg will know, he speaks to the same customers that I do. We have to recognise the fact that having ubiquitous high-quality service is something that shouldn't be forgotten about. With over 6.5 million customers on the platform, connecting fibre to businesses and homes is really difficult. And making sure that you're able to be consistent and prove that you can offer a certain level of quality engineering, that it doesn't risk your customers churning, is something which is huge. So a lot of focus gets put on the pricing, but actually, we are a company of engineers that are out there trying to deliver their best for customers, and that shouldn't be underestimated, and it's about that as well. So it's both that we'll continue to focus on.
Thanks, Katie. Natalie, the current regulatory framework that we have in the UK at the moment includes some restrictions on the open reach pricing flexibility. I spoke to somebody yesterday who said they thought that that was a very progressive and creative way of using the S&P framework. Effectively, there are restrictions on geographic discounting, so that Openreach can't discount its prices only where it has competition from other operators. And there are also restrictions on the terms that they can offer in terms of whether they're conditional on volume or packages or services and things like that. And what we've seen now in the TAR, which is the consultation, by the way, that's just come out, so we've got a year worth of Ofcom looking at responses and understanding what's going on. We've seen that framework strengthened. We've seen it now including a prohibition on geographic retail inducement frameworks. We've seen an increased duration of pre-notification framework. So clearly, Ofcom must be having continued concerns on that angle. Do you want to give us a little bit of insight of the kind of risks that you're looking at?
Sure. I mean, firstly, Geeta, I have to say I'm very impressed because I think you've read the whole of the TAR and
oh, yes.
1,000 pages. That's not a small undertaking in less than a week to digest properly. Look, I mean, I think, as you would have seen in the TAR, we recognise that the geographic opportunity around competition has increased significantly since we last looked at this nearly 5 years ago. So across the country now, we think that the potential for competition has increased from 70 to 90%. But geography continues to be very important. And I think you can see through here on the panel in terms of the geographic nature of the altnets. Companies have decided to focus on specific areas. So we don't underestimate how important that is an aspect, back to your point about risks and issues. And we continue to come back to this theme that this is a long-term infrastructure play, using Greg's words, and we need to give this time. So what we've done through the Telecoms Access Review is recognise from what we've learned and what we've seen in the marketplace, because this is an evidence-based review. I mean, I'm absolutely covered in economists, so I can't tell you how many economists currently are trawling all through the information that we've received and will continue to receive. But ultimately, we need to make sure that, particularly at the margin, as the market evolves, we continue to give the opportunity for competition to develop, because 5 years into a 10-year strategy, we've still got a long way to go.
Any views from the altnets on has Ofcom gone far enough? What are the issues?
The 1,000-page document landed last Thursday.
7 a.m. I'm sure Greg, you were there with a cup of coffee, reading every page.
Highlighted pen?
Yeah.
I had my daughter's a strategy consultant right down there, and she said, just feed it through ChatGPT.
I can guarantee that quite a few companies have done that.
It's also my wife's birthday. She's right there. I got to shout out to her. Yeah, thank you. She's here, and now I'm nervous. But so far, from our reading, we think that the Ofcom has really looked at the market and understood that fibre coverage isn't competition. Fibre coverage is just stuff in the ground. Competition is price per gigabit lines and how many users are using them, and whether or not all this great foreign direct investment, remember that foreign direct investment of 20 to 30 billion pounds into the UK, is getting a return. Because why else would anybody invest in the UK? If you're investing in a regulatory environment, in a market that has a regulator and an incumbent, and you're being induced to invest in that, you want a return. And the return will only come from shifting the customers off the legacy incumbent networks onto the new networks, whether it's through an aggressive retailer, and he's one of the best. He's one of the best. And we're all becoming super good as retailers to take the customers, or in our case, a wholesaler who needs to take the customers one by taking Vodafone off of Openreach, taking TalkTalk off of Openreach, and then taking, for instance, Sky off Openreach. But to go to Natalie's point and the whole panel's point, this is a long-term game. We've been negotiating with Sky for a decade. Honest to God, we made a 77-page PowerPoint proposal 10 years ago that said, here's the way that you could anchor a new infrastructure that would guarantee you better prices, guarantee you a better product, and guarantee you a better service. And they said, we love it, but it's a PowerPoint. But as soon as you get across at least 3 million, then we'll use you. Well, we're now across 4 million. We've signed the contract. Took us 6 months to negotiate it. We've got a 9-month onboarding exercise before they can even use this one customer. And then you have a 30-year contract. So it's a long-term play, right? The whole business that we're doing, whether you're a small retailer or a small altnet, it's a long-term return on invested capital, and it will only occur if the customers shift. And I can't tell you enough how much we need help. We all do, because the incumbents have a 30-year, 40-year, 50-year history of owning that customer base, owning the revenue lines, owning the lobbying support, owning the government, owning everybody in there. And we're trying to battle against that. That's what a challenger is. That's what sparked this industry, is that thought that we can do. We can do this. We can change the UK from a laggard to a leader. And we've done that. Now, the final bit of this, and I think it'll take longer than the 5-year, but Ofcom signaled they'll even continue to look at this market beyond the 5-year window if material competition hasn't emerged sufficiently. I think those are precisely the words. And what that means is that those 16 million homes that are built by altnets have sufficiently shifted the customers from the old incumbent networks, cable or copper from BT or fiber from BT, shifted them onto those new networks. And that has to occur. And so we need all the help. It's whether it's holding the pricing at a certain level, or it's making PIA more available, or it's making no geographic pricing, or if it's eliminating volume agreements by the incumbent, or if it's allowing Jeremy to break all those 2-year contracts that everybody makes everybody sign, so that you don't feel like as a consumer you can even shift. So it's just a long investment program, infrastructure, and we do need all the help we can get. And I think the TAR is angling it, the Telecom Access Review. The TAR is a funny term, but because I don't want to be tarred and feathered or anything.
It's better than the previous acronym. So.
But it looks like it's all going in the right direction with the right words.
Any other? I mean, before anybody else answers, maybe I could just throw in, because we've had a whole day 2 days ago on copper switch off, and I would like to, if anybody answers, it's still on the same theme. If you have any thoughts on copper switch off, please throw them into your contributions.
Copper switch off needs to benefit
Greg.
everybody.
It's the others.
Oh, sorry.
Anybody else have something to say? No? Otherwise, Greg, you can go.
I can add something. So what's interesting is that I think Katie at the beginning acknowledged that in BD UK areas where currently there is funding to go from copper to fiber, the broadband was not great broadband, but I thought the FTTC network was still relatively good. So.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, to put it into context, for the next 30 years, right? So this is about going to the next generation. So obviously very good broadband for superfast.
That's why I was just getting confused.
Yeah, and there's still pockets in there of customers who get missed out in the first round. So there is some not spots in there.
No, it's fine. I think what sparked the altnet to exist in the UK was a very. So I think a week ago, where I was at a dinner and Katie was there too, and somebody complained that I think when FTTC basically started, they didn't have the ability to deploy a lot of green cabinets basically everywhere and to do FTTC basically in the UK. And so for me, what I've realized is, and at that time, my statement there is, no, it was actually a great thing. Because when Openreach in the UK, so the incumbent, was busy deploying lots of green cabinets and putting FTTC everywhere, the altnet were busy deploying fiber. And that was a huge opportunity for us because what really, at least for me, how I looked at the UK market when I started doing fiber is a typical innovator dilemma type of scenario. Is you have a technology which is copper, where clearly there is something much better. So I think it's even through last decade, so you could still hear people having copper technology like cables, saying, "Oh, cable is completely fine," but at the same time, they were deploying fiber. So on one hand, they were saying something, and on the other hand, they were saying something different. Openreach also had this kind of, I think, last decade, in the early part of the decade, at some point it was, okay, maybe we should do fiber, and then, well, maybe we shouldn't. And therefore there was this, oh, maybe GFAS is okay, maybe FTTC is okay, maybe copper is fine. And it really created an opportunity for all of us in the UK, because what we've realized is if the two incumbents in the UK, or maybe one incumbent and Virgin Media and O2, they are going to stick to copper, we should do fiber. It's a fantastic opportunity because you have now a technology which is faster, better, cheaper to run. They're completely distracted thinking that copper is the future, so why not? Let's explore that. And at the same time, through basically that period, luckily for us, the retail internet service provider in the UK kept basically all the pricing relatively high. So then when you actually combine the fact that you've got a brand new technology, which was not that brand new, just to be clear, last decade, so it's fiber has been much older than that. But you have a brand new technology, and you combine that with pricing that are at the retail level far too high compared to what people actually want to pay. You get basically a perfect storm, which is the innovator dilemma case. You've got basically now a business case. You get a spreadsheet out, you get your slide deck, you put the numbers in, you discount a bit of the pricing, you roll out a new fiber, and you've got a business model that starts working. And for us, at least for me, that's how I've looked at it basically since the beginning. So copper switch off is important, but at the same time, I mean, let's be clear, it's not like the FTTC network is a bad network. So if you can get 50 meg to a home, it's good. It's not the end of the world. Obviously, I shouldn't say that. So fiber is it's like you want crazy high speed. Yeah, you want crazy high speed and so on. But it's not like this is terrible. We are not talking about ADSL 2 or even ADSL and so on. This is not that. But at the same time, now most operators in the UK are looking at XGS-PON. So that's something that for me, I started doing XGS-PON, so 10 gigabit PON back in 2018. City Fibre was doing GPON. Openreach was considering just GPON. Virgin Media was doing RF over glass and were also kind of a variant of this type of technology. And nobody thought, okay, but why should we not do actually faster? And now City Fibre has upgraded to XGS-PON. Virgin Media with Next Fiber is doing XGS-PON, Community Fiber. And I think I see for me the role of the altnet is to actually set the agenda and the pace actually for the UK market, because let's be clear, Openreach and Virgin Media will not be upgrading the network at that pace if it was not for us. So we actually shape that market in the UK, and we shape that market with a lot of capital that we've attracted basically from from everywhere in the world. Maybe not everywhere, but most places in the world. And now it's about turning basically all that capital into that into something basically formidable, which I think is the next stage basically of what we are going to look at. But whether the copper gets switched off or not, for me, doesn't really matter.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Copper switch off should have happened already. It should have happened years ago. We exist because of inaction from the incumbent, right? That's the only reason we're on this stage. They didn't do what we should have done many years ago as a country for all of the benefits that fibre brings to, the economic benefits, the societal benefits, all of those things that we talk about. So it should have happened already. Thank God it hasn't, because we're here. And that so please don't switch it off. Keep going, that's fine. But it should have happened a while ago. And yeah, I think we just got to, carry on doing what we do and wait for the incumbent to do what it decides to do.
Right. I just want to kind of, can we just ask if there are any questions from the floor now? We could go on forever up here. We got a question down here on the front row. Just getting a mic coming up to you, Guy. And please, when you ask questions, can you introduce yourselves?
Guy. That's famous. He's famous. Guy.
Hello, Guy Miller. I run a UK altnet. Apparently. So it's wonderful to hear what all the challenges are doing, but the numbers that Katie speaks about speak for themselves, right? Openreach are building as many homes as every other fibre co put together. By the sounds of it, Openreach are adding 3, 4, 5 times as many customers per month as every fibre co put together. Is there anything that's going to happen other than Openreach winning? And what happens if they do? What happens to the UK if Openreach do win?
Is that who do you want to answer that one, Guy?
Should we start with Natalie?
I thought you might say that.
Yeah, I was going to point that.
Yeah. So to a degree, it is not our job to have a crystal ball, right, and predetermine outcomes. Our job is to enable the market, ensure that there's a level playing field, and then leave it to the companies to make the most of that. However, we have to keep an eye on outcomes for consumers, right? That is our primary purpose, and on the investment environment, as I said. So we need to see how this develops. You're not going to like this answer because I'm not going to say what we're going to do or not do because you wouldn't expect me to. But I think in the Telecoms Access Review, you see that we recognise that this job might not be done by the end of the 5-year period. And that's why we have set out that in 2031, again, we will have to see what the state of the significant market power of Openreach is, and that we are leaving all options on the table. But I think it's also worth recognising that the expectations of consumers are changing over time, and fibre is also not the only game in town, right? So this week, for example, Ofcom has published a consultation on satellite to mobile. And I also think it's therefore our job as Ofcom to recognise that this is one component in an overall communications digital infrastructure system. And in the debate that we've just had about copper, it's also recognising that there's the overall strategic picture in terms of how do we make sure the UK's got the best digital infrastructure in the world, because that should be our ambition. We should be that lofty. But it's also recognising that consumers' needs are going to evolve, and there are different types of consumers that we will need to keep an eye on. So that's a very long-winded way of me saying we're going to have to see how it goes. But ultimately, our focus will always be the consumers, recognising the investment environment, and also keeping in mind that this is a long-term play, potentially past 2031 as well.
Just to come back on the point that Guy made, Openreach are losing customers. They're not winning customers. They are migrating from copper to fibre, which makes the numbers seem impressive, but it is migrating. They are, at an increasingly rapid rate, losing customers quarter on quarter to the work that the altnets are doing in the room. And we have to protect that. And that's, it's Ofcom's responsibility to protect that environment for us moving forward, to create the stability in the landscape for investors to want to continue the journey, and to enable all of those benefits that consumers will then get from protecting that position.
I mean, it's interesting, this fixation on migrating customers. That business model is no different for me than it is for Greg. And actually, is it the same economic argument, which is it's customers on the platform choosing to be on the platform and paying for the service to pay back the cost of building it. So I'm not really sure this difference between whether or not you're migrating from copper or you're winning. That is, in essence, how you get customers onto the platform. And to your point, Guy, which is, it's always this nuanced piece, which is to the TAR piece, which is with FTTP being such a competitive marketplace. On the one hand, that could argue for more deregulation, but on the other hand, if that wasn't to be there, then actually, if we were to be regulated, that shows that it has worked. So there's always puts and takes, but it's nothing really new to Openreach. And I think the piece for us is we just get our heads down, we just build, we keep building, go faster, and we just continue to deliver great service to get customers. And then ultimately, we can see that competition is working, as all of these guys are saying. We'll just continue to compete on the merits for customers, and then the market will shake out.
Can I?
Yeah, quickly.
It would be a crying shame, Guy, if we spent the last decade anchoring in competition, 20 billion worth of invested capital. Altnets have put in 10 billion of invested capital, not to have them emerge as a third competitive network driving competition for the UK. It'd be a crying shame if that were to occur, because you will have re-entrenched the monopoly provider, not detrenched them. What we're trying to do is get to a position in the UK market, per their regulation, where there's enough competition that Openreach doesn't need to be regulated. That only occurs if we survive as a third network, just like there's 3 mobile phone companies in the UK. They deemed that they needed 3. The benefits have already been seen, that competition sparking it has piled in the investment into this space and piled in the increase of gigabit lines and at 90% reduction of prices. The benefits of it all are clear evidence. Math is math. Economics are economics. It's fact. So if in 5 years we haven't entrenched a third national network that can be sustainable for long term in the UK, then it would be a crying, crying, crying shame.
I think Openreach has already lost. So it's, and the reason why they've already lost is, I'm not sure I agree with the 16 million, but there is definitely in the region of 13 to 14 million homes that have already been built and passed with fiber. That asset is going nowhere. That asset is not going to Openreach and is unlikely to go to VMO2, but we'd love to understand that. But that asset is not going anywhere. Therefore, they've already lost. The question is how much market share are they going to lose in that process? Because this is what is already happening. If you look at the financial reporting of the 2 largest infrastructure, this is not a report where they tell you that growth is there, everything is fine. This is a report where they signal that they're just going to carry on losing customers. And the question is how much. But so for me, I tend to be kind of the happy guy in fiber in the UK. So I think everything is fine as far as I'm concerned.
I thought I was the happy guy.
It's I go around, deliver my homes, deliver my customers, keep raising capital. Right now, I've got my own ISP, which I think at some point this year will be adding more customers every quarter than Vodafone, which is the single largest retailer in the UK adding customers. And I will carry on bleeding customers, basically, all those ISPs. I disagree with what Katie said around that, thinking that migrating a customer from FTTC to FTTP on the same network is identical to spending basically a lot of marketing and sales to acquire a brand new customer that decide to churn basically from the network. This is apple and oranges as far as I'm concerned. I would rather have to migrate them if I had to choose. If it was the same thing, I would love to be able to migrate customer. And if you can give me that opportunity to just migrate them instead of spending that much money, I will happily take this opportunity. But in the absence of that, I take the fight. One comment that was said earlier is that it should have happened a long time ago. I don't know if it should have happened a long time ago, the fiber and Openreach, because it's what competition is about. Is they make decisions. Sometimes it turns out those are bad decisions. G-Fast, sports.
Right.
There's a track record usually with BT in making bad decisions. That's okay. And that's good for us. So I never bet on my competitors or the people that I compete against to make mistakes, because that's a bet that you don't have a control basically against. So I always bet on my ability to deliver and execute. And to a certain extent, I think this is one thing that I've said over the last 10 years is most often it's not about capital, it's about execution. So you can give 10 billion to someone. If he's not able to execute, he's going to waste that money. If you give basically capital basically to someone who can execute very well, that money is not going to be wasted. And that's the thinking. So as far as I'm concerned, we won already against Openreach. The question is how much market share we get from them.
Thanks, Jeremy. Now, one very quick question with very quick answer. We've got about 3 minutes left. We've got one.
Hi, yes, I'm Cem, Turkish FTTH operator. A wonderful panel, lots of great viewpoints. In the fiber business, basically you have two major bottlenecks. One is on the infrastructure and one is on the distribution. And so it's these two bottlenecks that have made kind of moving to competition more difficult in this industry, whereas in many other industries, kind of digital disruption has brought much faster waves of competition. So the UK, it appears, have really focused on kind of the infrastructure side, and you know, compared to many other markets, have really allowed for a very rich ecosystem of investors, of FDI and so forth, and I don't know, maybe 100 players. But on the other hand, on the distribution side, I mean, UK started in a very strange situation with a very concentrated market, which is true in some countries, but not every country. But it seems like no real change has happened there, and there's not that much effort. All the money is going to the infrastructure. How much money is going to this? And you know, Greg mentioned there's 2-year lock-ins, but you know, all the new guys seem to be also selling 2-year lock-in contracts. I don't see like what's the new, and there's innovation on the speed. But it seems like what really needs to kickstart in the UK market is, you know, when you look at the European success stories, you look at Free, maybe at Digi, is players who are really strong on not only on necessarily, possibly on infrastructure, but on the retail side, you know, saying, you know, the digital, the dilemma of innovation is, you know, you got to bring something totally new. And are the players really bringing a totally new approach? And if we're just relying on the same old 4 or 5 players, is that going to solve things? Because I think still in the top 6 retail ISPs, not one of the altnets is there yet. It's still the old guys. I mean, maybe Jeremy's going to get in there, but still, it's a very concentrated market.
It is.
Thanks very much.
I know we've got 3 seconds, so I'm going to give you the easiest, quickest answer. The Telecoms Access Review our consultation closes on the 5th of June. Anyone who's got ideas, including that, we really want to hear from you. Go onto the Ofcom website, you can approach me personally, and we want to hear new ideas. It's not only just about sort of how the market's been operating for the last 5 years, it's for the next 5 years. And if you think that we are getting things wrong and we should be doing them differently, get in touch by the 5th of June.
We're out of time. So I think I'm going to have to say no, Jeremy, because we're quite strict with timing here. Can I say thank you very much to the panel, and thank you to you who participated with us. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good.